Welcome to the Field Notes podcast, presented by Seaworthy Functional Medicine. Seaworthy exists to help you overcome your complex health challenges so you can be fully vital. Now, here's your host, Dr. Rob Downey.
Whether it's folks dealing with brain fog and feeling super frustrated, or people that just want to be at their very best, which is all of us really, in terms of mental fitness, there's so much going on right now, and there's so much focus on the gut, the connection between the gut and the brain called the gut-brain axis. Uh, and then this is so important, but not all the information out there is the best. And today we are so fortunate to be joined by Dr. Shawn Talbott, who is a state-of-the-art person who can really illuminate for us what's going on and how to leverage this gut-brain axis. So, Dr. Shawn, thanks so much for your time today.
Oh, it's great to be with you, Rob. Appreciate it.
I I get to be with my tribe when I get to do this, and this is another one of those moments. This is just so cool what you're doing. Your title alone should light us all up. Psycho nutritionist. How cool is that?
Right, exactly. Depending on how you take it, right?
Yeah, yeah. And then PhD in nutritional biochemistry from Rutgers, and also entrepreneurial work at MIT. So quite the toolkit to come at this with. I think this is a little different today because we're talking about optimal mental health, and then we've got some really specific stuff we need to do. And I don't mean to pick on all the information out there, but I think part of why people show up to podcasts is they want curated content to sort the wheat from the chaff.
Hmm.
And
Right.
so a bunch of folks may feel like they've got this, but I think when we hear it from you, it'll feel a little different. Let's just start with how the microbiome, the good bugs in our gut, the connection between the gut and the brain, so the gut-brain axis, and then our mental well-being, how are these connected?
Yeah, well, that's probably the best place to start. So, the gut we call, and I'm sure you have referred to this before, is as the second brain. It really is sending a lot of information bottom up, so to speak. So, those signals they can be electrical signals that go through your nervous system. They can be biochemical signals that go through your bloodstream. They can be signals that go through your immune system, which I actually consider to be like a communication organ as much as a shield to protect us from viruses and things like that. So with that in mind, that the gut is the second brain, the question is, all right, how can we get the good signals? And it's, you see these statistics thrown around a lot. I throw them around myself. 90% of your serotonin is made in your gut, and that's kind of the neurotransmitter of happiness. Or 70% of your dopamine, the neurotransmitter of motivation, is also made in your gut, right? And you can go down the whole list of neurotransmitters. Lots of them are made in the gut. But it's not like the serotonin that we make in our gut leaks out of the gut and gets into the bloodstream and then leaks across the blood-brain barrier and makes us happier, right? We know it doesn't happen that way. But it is some combination of, if we have the right bacteria that are producing the right signaling molecules, and we can make sure that those signals do get traversed across any of those things that I just said, we know that people are happier. We know that this approach can reduce depression, reduce anxiety, improve brain fog, help with motivation, help with sleep quality. There's good human clinical trials that show these benefits. I try to be honest with people, though. As a scientist, I'm always looking for, all right, what's the mechanism of action that's going on here? How is this? All right, I can see that it's happening. How is it happening? And that's why I really like to get into the biochemistry. And to, be perfectly honest, we haven't gotten that all completely figured out yet.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, it's so beautiful the work you and I get to do. It's endlessly interesting as well as
Right.
endlessly useful. At least that's how it feels to me. So let's let's stay mechanistic because I think people love this. I would say folks who love the Field Notes podcast, they love to get to hear from thought leaders kind of look under the hood
Right.
about how you think about your work. So what are some mechanisms that would help people uh oh understand this better, so then they more fired up to engage it.
Yeah, yeah. So one of the most clear-cut examples that we have right now are there are families of bacteria that will make more GABA, right? GABA is the body's primary relaxing neurotransmitter. So, when we're under stress, when we're tense and irritable and can't relax, that's usually like a GABA problem. And I'll sort of say that in quotes, right? If we could produce more GABA, we would relax, we would de-stress, we would wind down. A lot of people who have trouble falling asleep at night, they lie there and their head hits the pillow and they're tired, but they can't really wind down enough to fall asleep, and their head is just spinning, and that's usually a GABA problem. So if we can get them to make more GABA, they'll relax and they'll fall asleep. Whether they get a good night's sleep or not, that's a whole nother series of neurotransmitters. But let's stick with GABA for a
Hmm.
second. We know that, like, we can identify specific strains of bacteria that are good GABA producers and not so good GABA producers. And so there are biotech companies that are out there right now that are engineering bacteria to make more GABA. And so the idea is, and there are also companies that are identifying the bacterial strains that are just good GABA producers and developing those as probiotics. So the idea is you could take one of these, you could supplement with one of these bacteria, and now you have a microbiome that is better at making GABA. And then in a sense, you have this on-demand ability. When you're stressed, your gut-brain axis will sense that, and some signal that we haven't really figured out yet will tell that bacterial species to make more GABA, and you'll be more relaxed. And so there are a handful right now clinical trials in humans showing that if we have stressed people, or we have women with menopause is just one of the subsets of populations that's been studied, and they supplement with these bacterial strains, they have lower stress indices, they have better mood, they have better sleep quality. So, like, that's just one, like, of these lanes of saying, oh, we can do it with GABA. And then there's serotonin producers, there are dopamine producers, there are families that produce short chain fatty acids that have a whole range of metabolic benefits. So that's like when I'm looking at mechanism,
Hmm.
that's the kind of
Hmm.
stuff that I'm trying to figure out to say, like, okay, does this make sense?
Hmm. Mm. Thank you so much. I think I always try to think about what the audience wants to know. And I think the mechanisms help people sort of get their arms around it.
Right.
Uh, the information you gave us to get ready today is so helpful, because I think there's a couple of layers right there. So I want to segue into how people can think about engineering their microbiome. But I think there's two lanes here today. So one is there's these really cool technological advances, and then
Mm-hmm.
there's going to be folks in our audience who think, uh, on the other end of the spectrum, they think, can I just do this with food?
Right.
What are the probiotics, prebiotics, and nutrients? And then what are the sort of cool new advances? And even do people kind of have to do it in order for something like you just described to work? Do they need to be eating whole food and have some of the right prebiotics and probiotics or living foods in place? How's that?
Right.
Illuminate that for us a little bit.
Yeah, well, this is sort of the perennial question, right? And this is what I talk to my students about all the time, And with my students, it's always like I get on my soapbox about the biochemical mechanism all the time, and you can sometimes see, like, hey, I do a lot of my classes on Zoom, right? So you can see the
Hmm.
little thumbnails of all the students, and you can see sometimes their eyes roll back, They're like, oh no, we're going down the biochemistry route again. But I try to come back to it and say, you know what, if we can, the reason we talk about the biochemistry so much is that if we can understand that underlying mechanism of action, like under the hood, like you said a few minutes
Hmm.
ago, if we can understand that in like more precise way, then it allows it, like, then we understand it better. Then we can say, like, oh, this is what's happening. Okay, now if I apply this intervention for my patient or my client, then it's probably gonna work better, right? So it's not understanding the biochemistry for the sake of biochemistry. It's so we can apply it to help our patients better. And so one of those questions comes to what you just asked me. Can we do it with just food? Do we need to use these whiz bang strategies that are coming out of biotech labs and probiotic laboratories and things like that? And I view it in two ways, right? I'm a food first nutritionist, so I want people to be eating their fiber and eating their fermented foods and getting their flavonoids and limiting their processed foods and all that kind of stuff. That's where I would love people to start and do like most of their groundwork and kind of heavy lifting there, and then use the supplements if they feel like they need them as like the cherry on top, so to speak, to just like dial in whatever it is they're trying to do. There's another way of looking at it though, which is people are busy. The people who are listening right now have heard you say it, have heard me say it a million times, right? Less processed foods, more whole foods, go to the produce section, like eat local, like eat a rainbow, they've heard it a million times. And so from that perspective, I think sometimes we can say, you know what? Sometimes we can start with a supplement like I'll use that GABA example I just gave a few minutes ago. Let's say that you're trying to solve your stress levels and you can take a GABA supplement and that can help you lower your stress levels. Now you're lower stress, now you're calmer in a stressful situation, now you can get a better quality sleep. Maybe now, because you feel better, you're going to be more inclined to pick up a physical activity program. You're going to be more inclined to, make a salad for dinner instead of calling Grubhub. So
Hmm.
I think you can make an argument both ways, like food first, that would be my preference. But I could also see where people would use the supplement almost as like the easy button to get themselves started. And as
Hmm.
long as it gets them started, then I'm okay with it. What I don't like is
Yeah.
when people go, forget about all that nutrition stuff. I'll just take the pill and that'll solve all my problems. And that's, they're not going to get what they're looking
Yeah.
for if that's their
Yeah.
approach.
Yeah. I love this. A, I think it's really elegant. B, it's what I see in practice. And C, I think it's really compassionate in that so many people now feel like they're swimming against so much current.
Right.
And so if we don't meet them where they're at, and for many people, if we don't offer something that helps or turns on a mission critical pathway to get them some relief, then it's kind of a non-starter.
Right.
They sort of just keep moving through the mill of folks they're hoping are going to help them. So I think your
Right. Right.
observation
If I
is,
could,
yeah,
yeah, if I could share a quick story. So a
yeah.
couple years ago, we did a trial, right? We did a research study where we got a whole group of people. This is pre-pandemic, right? So you can tell how long ago it was because we had a group of people that got together at a wellness center. And we said to them, "Hey, we're gonna give you guys some supplements." And they were whole food supplements, right? They were, protein supplements and green powders and fiber powders and probiotic things. It was like trying to sort of replicate what they were missing in their diets, right? And we said to the people, we said, look, we want everyone to take these supplements. All you have to do is mix it up and make a smoothie every day is basically what it was. But please, over the course of this, was it 6 weeks? I think it was 6 weeks. We said, don't change anything, right? Don't change your diet. Don't start sleeping better. Don't get on a physical activity program. All we're going to do is measure you from time point zero to time point end of the study, and we're going to look at your microbiome, and we're going to look at your inflammatory markers, and et cetera, et cetera. But what we were so we were doing that, but what we were really doing is seeing if their stress indexes went down, to see if we gave them a little like Fitbit so they could,
Hmm.
track their steps and track their sleep and things like that. We wanted to see if it changed their lifestyle indication, even though we told them not to. And our hypothesis was if we can get these people to feel better, then they will make better choices. And that's exactly what we found, right? Even though we told them not to change anything, people were just subconsciously eating more fruits and vegetables and less processed food. They were subconsciously taking more steps. Like they didn't start an exercise program, but they were
Hmm.
moving more. They
Hmm.
weren't like we didn't they weren't trying to get more sleep, but they were getting more good quality sleep. So it really proved to us that if we can get people to eat better, and here it was, it was just a smoothie a day, then they're going to feel better. And if they feel better, they're going to make better choices. And like our hope was that it would create this like virtuous cycle of feeling good, better choices, feeling good, more and more and more of that. And it seemed to pan out. So it was a very interesting study to do.
Very nice. I'd always heard and seen for years that green powders, increase people's just desire for vegetables. Witness that
Right.
myself. And all I would flag there then is, for anybody who's going to sort of define their success by how much willpower they have to exert or how much they have to suffer. Pretty much, Field Notes is always talking about This feels like a friendship. This feels like something good happening, that it's okay to let it happen and manifest. It's like your garden doing really well or something like that. Uh, it's it's a wonderful blessing in a world where a lot of people kind of assume they have to fight for the win, that
Right. I
our
love
body
that.
knows the way. That's what I flash on as I hear you talk. The body knows the way. Good things
Yep.
happen.
Yep, yep. The best thing I can hear back from somebody is they go, "You know what? That didn't even feel like I was doing a program," right? Because they have this past of these programs that were they just couldn't wait to be
Yeah,
done with, you know? And now they're like, "Yeah,
exactly.
I got these benefits. I feel like I cheated," you know?
Yeah, we want them to keep feeling that way.
That's right.
Well, how about this next then? So, probiotics, the good bugs in the gut, prebiotics, the food for the good bugs, and then the nutrients that support them. What do people need to know about that trifecta?
Yeah, I try to tell people that it's one of the challenges I think, and I'm sure you wrestle with this too, is that there's so much information out there. How do you not like dumb it down isn't the right word, but how do you curate it so to say to our clients and patients and listeners, here are the things that you really need to focus on, right? With all these people talking about all these different things. What are the things that really really matter, right? And when we're talking about probiotics, prebiotics, and I use the term phytobiotics, right, to talk about all these plant extracts and flavonoids and carotenoids and thiols and all these kinds of things that are in our fruits and vegetables that we don't really think of as vitamins and minerals. Those help to nourish the microbiome and help to improve your gut integrity. And you really want to get that whole collection of them. I boil it down to three F's. I say to people, you want to focus on your fiber, on your fermented foods, and on your flavonoids. And the flavonoids takes care of the phytonutrient piece, right? It's getting, eating brightly colored fruits and vegetables, lots of berries, lots of citrus, lots of greens, that kind of stuff. If you do that and, eat a rainbow, people will say, it usually solves the fiber issue too, right? Because those are all coming from fruits and vegetables, which hardly any of us eat enough of. But then the fermented foods is sometimes where I lose people because most North Americans are not it's not part of our normal diet, right? And they're a little bit weird. They're in a section of the grocery store we don't usually go to. They smell funny. They're kind of sour. But you go to an Asian population, Korea or China or Japan or someplace like that, or even some South American populations. They're eating fermented foods with every meal. They're eating a little bit of fermented dairy at breakfast, and they're eating a little bit of fermented you know, uh, vegetables with, lunch and dinner and things like that. So, like, that is probably the big missing piece where a lot of North Americans can really make some huge strides because what those fermented foods will end up doing is helping to set up the right environment in your gut. And by that, I mean, it's like, your good, and I'll say this kind of in quotes, like your good bacteria like a slightly acidic environment in your digestive tract. And if you're eating like most Westerners do, you're eating lots of processed food, and that's gonna make your gut not acid enough. And that's gonna preferentially grow, again, quote unquote, bad bacteria that are more sort of inflammatory. So if we can do those things, we can eat fiber, feed our good bacteria, eat fermented foods, get the right environment so that it suppresses the growth of the bad bacteria and encourages the growth of the good guys. And then you get these phytobiotics, these phytonutrients that can help gut integrity and help protect the whole environment. You're really setting yourself up to have this really nice, diverse, resilient microbiome that's going to make, some of those neurochemicals that we just talked about.
Mm, nice. Yeah, and it's wonderful too. I like it when things stay with people. They all start with the same letter,
Right, right.
so it's something people can leave today's podcast with to, um, just have an action item right away. We've talked a little bit about how the bacteria affect the brain. You want to talk a little bit about how people drift into the imbalances that lead to the problems? You've alluded to processed food and stuff, but
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So processed food is probably the most direct impact. If we're eating processed food, right? We're eating, and not to pick on any, particular fast food purveyor, right? But the way that most of us eat, you go through the drive-through, you get a hamburger and fries or a chicken sandwich and fries, and there's not a lot of fiber in there. So what you're getting a lot of, refined carbohydrates. You're probably getting a lot of, highly heated, saturated fats. You're not getting a lot of vitamins and minerals. You're not getting a lot of phytonutrients. You're not getting a lot of fiber. And so it's kind of a double whammy of badness for your microbiome, right? You're not getting the good stuff, which is bad, and you're getting all this other stuff that is, in a sense, starving your good bacteria and nourishing your bad bacteria, right? So that's the most direct place where people are going to be kind of like damaging their microbiome and setting themselves up for this, imbalance, which we call dysbiosis. But then there's other ones that you might not, that most people might not think of, right? So when we talk about the gut-brain axis, it's not just the gut talking to the brain, it's also the brain talking to the gut. And so we know that if you're in a stressful mindset, that those stress signals are going from your brain. Now they're going down instead of bottom up. It's top down. And there's some really good studies, some of them out of UCLA, showing that if you have a lot of stress signals from your brain, that will actually change the growth of the bacteria in your gut. So preferentially growing more inflammatory bacteria. So, and I'm going to say this very simply for effect, you're stressed out in your head, it sends these stress signals to the gut that grows bad bacteria, which makes inflammatory signals, which send more stress back up to the brain. There's also an aspect of your gut is a recirculator of hormones, and so we can like harness this for menopausal women, and we can get them to recirculate more estrogen with the right bacteria in their gut. But the same thing happens for stress hormones like cortisol. So you could have a population of stress loving bacteria in your gut that are constantly recirculating cortisol. So now you're overexposed to the stress hormone. Lack of sleep is another place where it will change your microbiome. So, all of these sources of quote unquote stress, whether it's dietary stress from processed foods, it's stress of life, that we all live in, 24/7 modern world, or it's a stress from sleep deprivation. Those are all places that have pretty good documentation that they're going to flip your microbiome balance into a state of dysbiosis.
Mm. I'm really glad you invoked where the studies came from. The first time I heard that wasn't talking to Chris Kresser, but reading him way back when.
Yep.
And this certain things, the work of Herb Benson at Harvard regarding meditation and epigenetic
Yep.
expression, there are certain studies that to me are just the head exploding emoji. And our positive psychology or lack thereof,
Yeah.
changing the garden of our gut is one of the top five coolest things I've ever heard. And
Right. Right.
I keep
Exactly.
coming back
Exactly.
to it because it's not Star Trek. It's the opposite. This is paleo stuff, right? This is pre-agricultural people and the things that were, I mean, those of them that had it good, they were walking 8 or 9 miles a day, they were hunting, they were gathering things, they were telling stories, they were making babies, they were falling in love. I mean, pretty good lifestyle, right? No wonder that
Right.
would be
Right.
good for your microbiome.
Right, exactly, exactly. One of the
So,
yeah, it's funny. It's funny you bring that stuff up because what like I have this vivid memory of when I was in grad school a million years ago. We used to have to when we were copying a research article, right? We would take the big journal, we would go to a photocopier. There's probably people listening to us right now who don't even know what that is, right? We'd copy the journal article, and above the photocopier was somebody had ripped out from a magazine, like a health food magazine, something that said all disease begins in the gut, right? And it was there as a joke because here we were scientists and there was no evidence for this. And it was to remind us to go and collect the data and show what is true and that these hippies, all disease begins in the gut. Isn't that cute? And now I find myself doing this work and like every day is a head exploding emoji because we're finding out all this stuff and we're like, huh, all right. But now we have data to support the statements like that.
right. Oh, this is awesome. Um, Well, share a couple things then that are when people are thinking about gut health. You mentioned some of them, but what are some mistakes people might make?
Yeah, I think the biggest mistake, and I say this as somebody who has studied a lot of dietary supplements, like done research studies on supplements that other companies make. I've formulated dietary supplements. I've so like I'm in that world, right? So I'm not anti-supplement. But I would say one of the big mistakes that people make is thinking that just taking a supplement is going to solve their problems. Like I am an advocate for research-based supplements, but I think there's so much noise out there, especially when it comes to gut health. Take this colostrum, take this fiber, take this green powder, take this whatever. Not that they can't add benefits, right? I think there's definitely benefits if you sort of dig in and say like, all right, what does this actually do? What is the mechanism? Some of the things that we've already talked about. But I think the big mistake people make is thinking that like this one thing is going to solve all of my problems. Because if there's one thing, especially when it comes to how the gut relates to mental fitness, I will say to people all the time, it's a multifactorial kind of an issue, right? It might be your leaky gut. It might be your imbalance between your good and bad bacteria. It might be your immune system is out of balance. It might be that you're overinflamed. It might be that you have too much exposure to cortisol. It might be your neurotransmitters, serotonin, dopamine, GABA, etc. It could be any of those or all of those or some combination of those. And that's why I think it comes back to the solution has to be multifactorial, right? So a supplement can be one piece of that multifactorial solution, but so is your mindset, and so is your sleep quality, and so is the people you surround yourself with, and so is et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Right. And that's why, like, I love what you do on field notes. It's like bringing all this together and you
Mm,
almost put it out as a, like, I like to anyway, put it out there as this smorgasbord, right? It's a buffet. Because
mhm,
what I don't want people to think is to hear us vibe about that and they go, oh my gosh, it's too much. I can't do a dozen things.
mhm,
Well, pick off the buffet. What's going to work for you? Like
mhm,
pick some combination. Well, maybe it's a green powder and better sleep quality. Maybe it's a physical
mhm,
activity program and having a salad for lunch, or like start
mhm,
somewhere, you know?
mhm, mm. I'm so glad you brought this up, Dr. Sean, because the another head exploding emoji moment for me, and something I'd really like to hear you comment on, is I got some training at one point through Institute for Functional Medicine, and they're always invoking mechanisms, right? I get
Right.
flashbacks to med school. Why do I need to know about this receptor or this gene? And the professor says, because it matters. Just show up for the test.
Because I said so. It's
And
on the
also,
test.
and ultimately, I would say it does feel to me like the rigorousness then of understanding mechanisms makes us better at what we do in converting it into real time, for everyone. But the work of Dale Bredesen around pre-dementia and early dementia being
Hmm.
reversible. As I read The End of Alzheimer's, and then I got trained by him for my IFM in one of the modules, 30 plus 30 plus things happening in the body that either tip the brain over to not growing the business, pre-dementia or dementia, or
Hmm.
those same 30 plus things, inflammation, blood sugar, toxicity, lack of trophic support, those 30 plus things, once enough of them get tipped the right way,
Right.
neuroplasticity kicks in and the brain goes back to growing the business, independent of age, independent of other factors, family history, ApoE4 present or not, the genetic predisposition. And when I saw this in my practice, I still couldn't believe it that we had these pre-dementia and early dementia patients reversing. We had one increase their hippocampal volume, just like Bredesen described in his book. The memory center in the brain got bigger via serial
Yep.
MRIs. And so that to me is what we're inviting people to at this buffet is to me, this is the science of the body knows the way that a bunch of different solutions can all result in the body going from a downward self-worsting spiral to a self-improving spiral.
Right.
And I would kind of add, people have a bit of an intuition. They kind of think, I'm really intrigued by that green powder, or I've really wanted to play pickleball with my friend. I just haven't made the time. Or wow, the idea of my room being a cool, safe place to get a deep restorative rest. that sounds great. They kind of know something they'd like off the buffet, but what's your take
Yep.
on all that?
Yeah. So what you were just describing is I call that a systems approach, right? It could be this, it could be this, it could be. Well, why don't we try to balance a little bit of all of those? And the best thing about it, so I think of it from a biochemical perspective. If you are imbalanced in any of those factors, it can set off imbalance in the next one, the next one, the next one. It's like a biochemical dominoes game, if you will.
Hmm.
But you can reverse it. And once you start restoring balance in each nodes of that system, then that balance leads to more balance and more balance and more balance. You get that positive ripple effect, right? So, yeah,
Hmm.
I think that makes a lot of good sense. To answer your sort of intuition question, though. I talk about this a lot. In fact, I wrote about it in my last book that we have these feelings, right? That we have vocabulary for trust your heart, right? Or follow your heart, or trust your gut, or listen to your gut feelings, right? We have words in our language that describe these feelings. And I will sometimes say to my students, I go, have you ever sat down, you're trying to make a decision, and you sit down with a piece of paper or a notebook, and you go pros and cons, right? Here are all the reasons I should make the decision this way. Here are all the reasons I should make the decision that way. That's brain logic, right? That's what the brain in your head is very good at that. But there's something that's telling you, no, this doesn't make sense. I mean, logically, it says I should choose A, but I really feel that maybe B is going to be the better thing for me, right? Those are other signals that are coming from our other brains, our gut, our second brain, our heart, our third brain, and we need to listen to those. We've been taught from elementary school age all the way up through graduate school and medical school that those other signals, those other hearts, that like those other communications, we should tamp those down and just go with logic. And I think that's a mistake. And I think we need to be open to, wait a minute, why is my gut telling me this? That's information, and we need to sort of put it in there and make the right choice with as much information as we can.
Mm. I really think that's beautiful. And because I see it in my own life, uh, I can't imagine being a functional medicine doctor that's not benefiting from functional medicine myself, because I can't imagine commenting if I wasn't having the experience. Uh, and people talk about how your life will shout at you until you learn to hear the whispers, things like that. And I've noticed
Hmm.
I've tuned more into my gut and my heart. And it's really interesting the integrity that emerges from it too. I mean, sometimes I'll find there's some other variable that needs to change. Sometimes I'll find I've drifted into a little cynicism or hopelessness. And what's necessary is to, kind of get back to a fresh sense on meaning and showing up for the day, showing up for the moment. So I'm tuning into that radio station more and more,
Yeah.
listening to the
Right,
podcast of my
exactly.
gut and
Different
heart
radio
more and
stations.
more.
That's a wonderful. I love that. I'm going to steal that actually. That's a great way to describe it.
Uh, yeah, I feel like that's what I'm doing with patients too, attunement, right? It's tuning into the radio station of them. Um,
Hmm.
what more do you want to share with people then about this balancing or rebalancing? Please share some tools if you would, if you haven't already.
Yeah, I think it comes down to the three F's that I talked about before, right? If somebody wants to do something that is pretty easy to do, low cost and hugely impactful, if they can just either focus on all those three F's: fiber, fermented foods, flavonoids, or pick one to try to start doing better of. There's this thing that's going on TikTok now called fiber maxing, where people are saying like, hey, we don't get enough fiber. True. You should start eating 50 grams of fiber tomorrow. Not true. Because if you increase your fiber intake that drastically, where most people get 10 or 15 grams of fiber, we're supposed to get about 30, and you start eating 50, tomorrow, you're going to have some serious side effects. So like pick something, right? I'm gonna do the fiber one, and I'm gonna start today, and I'm gonna do that by adding an extra serving of a fruit and a vegetable. And then the next day, I'm gonna maybe I'm gonna do the same thing the next day. And then the third day, I'm gonna add another fruit. And then the next day, I'm gonna add another vegetable. Um, We tell people all the time to try the 30 plant challenge, right? Which is to eat 30 different plant foods in a 7-day period. So you go off to the produce section and you buy your normal things, right? You buy your lettuce and you buy your peppers and tomatoes that lots of people buy. But then you go, wait a minute, when's the last time I had carrots? When's the last time I had asparagus? When's the last time I had, I always get, delicious apples. Today I'm going to get Macintosh apples,
Hmm.
like really play around with it.
Hmm.
Because when you do 30 plant challenge, now you're getting a diversity of fiber and phytonutrients in your diet, and that's growing a diversity of bacteria in your microbiome, and they're making a diversity of these neurochemical signals, short chain fatty acids and neurotransmitters, etc. And that's going to make you more resilient, right? Just because of the food that you're eating. So, food is medicine, right? And this is
Hmm.
how we can use it to change how we feel.
Mm, beautiful. Well, because the stage is set, then how would you characterize the role of supplements? What's a way for, let's presume they're making a lifestyle play, and and they want to know sort of what's somebody who's as good at it as you are and who knows as much as you do. How do you recommend they think about supplements and make those sort of elegant choices that really pay big dividends?
Yeah, I would say so. So I formulate some of my own supplements, right? People can see my supplements at my company, threewaveswellness.com. And the supplements that I make are not for everybody, right? I have a probiotic supplement has probiotics, prebiotics, postbiotics, phytobiotics, all in one supplement, right? And people will say to me, "Oh, it's probiotics. Is this going to help with my digestive health, right? Is it going to help me go to the bathroom, for example, right?" And I say to them, I go, it's not that kind of biotic, it's a psychological it's what we call a psychobiotic, right? It's specifically geared to help people with resilience, help you
Hmm.
deal with stress better, help you with focus, energy, motivation, that kind of stuff. That's a very different kind of biotic than a biotic that's going to help your constipation. And if you want that, there are plenty of good ones that do that. There are other biotics that help with your immune system. So if you think you're coming down with something, you can get one of these, and your immune system will be stronger. You maybe ward off a cold. There are biotics that help with inflammation. There's biotics that help with sleep quality, and et cetera, et cetera. So my number one thing when it comes to supplements is to say to somebody, make sure you know what it's supposed to do before you choose it. Or said another way, think about the benefit you're looking for. Don't just go get a probiotic supplement because you think you need a probiotic supplement. Get a probiotic supplement if it's going to deliver the actual benefit that you're looking for. So if it's stress resilience, my product would be great. If it's some other benefit, then there's other
Hmm.
products out there that would do that. But make sure that it's aligned with the actual benefit that you're looking for.
Mm, very cool. Anything else to share today that we didn't get to?
Yeah, I would just say this. Like I've been doing the biotic thing for about 20 years now. When I first started doing it, it was really hard to measure a microbiome. We didn't really have a good handle on the signals going across the gut-brain axis, and now we do. And it is. I just have to say this. It is fundamentally changing how we think about not just mental fitness, which is sort of my area of research, but it's fundamentally changing every aspect of human health. Like we're understanding that you cannot be a healthy human without a healthy microbiome and without a healthy gut-brain axis. It is integral to our human experience. And so that right there, I think, including the aging process. If we keep our microbiome young, we think we can keep the whole organism young, which is just absolutely mind blowing. So my mind gets blown maybe not every day, but every week by
Hmm.
something new that's coming out.
Hmm.
And I think it's a place for people to focus on as this next tool they can use to improve their health and improve their performance in every way you can imagine.
Very nice. I cannot think of a better thing to highlight and underscore at the end. If you need an area of interest and you're thinking, where can I really get a lot of return on investment?
Right, bang for your
Where's
buck, right?
where's a lot of the action right now and things that'll pay big dividends and lasting benefits? Uh, the role of our gut health, it's this well, the phrase that comes out of my mouth when the door is closed in here and I'm with patients is your gut health is the cornerstone and foundation of your functional medicine house. And so
Right.
it's always worth attending to, always pays dividends. it's necessary for the other things to work. We could go on. So
Right. Love it.
yeah, yeah. And you mentioned where folks can find you. Anything else they need to know about, what it's like to work with you? Is it primarily sort of programs? Is it reading your books? Do people do what could they anticipate if they contacted you?
Yeah, so if people go to Three Waves Wellness, the number three Waves Wellness, you'll see three sort of options, right? So I've got some supplements that I do. I've got books. I've got like a learn area where we do classes, we do certification programs. I've got a lot of like free ebooks and mini courses and things like that. And then we have a mental fitness retreat where people actually come and stay with us, sort of like bed and breakfast style, and they learn about sleep quality, they learn about exposure to nature, they learn about good food. They learn about trying to turn off their brain and relaxing. So you can have an experience, you can have a supplement, you can have an educational program. So we're trying to surround people with all these different options.
Super. Well, it made my day getting to talk to you, and I know it's going to make a lot of people's day getting to hear this. So thanks again.
Thanks, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us for the Seaworthy podcast. Seaworthy exists to help people overcome their health challenges and be fully vital. If you think we've earned it, please consider giving this podcast a like, subscribing, and giving us a 5-star rating on the platform of your choice. Thanks.